I'm a 38-year-old woman, and I divorced my ex-husband Nick, who's now 40, almost 9 years ago. We had only been married for 3 years, and honestly, he had been a good husband. But because of one massive misunderstanding, he walked out and served me divorce papers just days later. He never even let me explain myself, so he never knew the truth. The way he left so quickly broke me, and because of that, I didn't fight the divorce, I just let him go. Back then, I was a housewife, and one afternoon Nick came home to see my old boyfriend Joe at the house. Without saying a single word, he turned around and walked right back out. The three of us had gone to college together, and Joe and I had only dated for about 3 months before I realized my feelings were stronger for Nick. That day, Joe had simply stopped by to invite both of us to his wedding, which was coming up in a few months. That was all. Nothing shady, nothing romantic, nothing inappropriate. I would never betray someone like that. But Nick assumed the worst, and instead of asking questions, he bolted. I remember running after him, trying to call his name, but he sped away and blocked me everywhere before I even had a chance to tell him what was happening. I didn't even know where he'd gone. For 2 whole days, I cried and panicked, completely lost. Even Joe tried reaching out to clear things up, but Nick had blocked him too. I held on to hope, thinking that once Nick calmed down, he would come back, and I'd explain everything, and we could just go back to our life together. But that moment never came. Instead, a few days later, the divorce papers showed up. It crushed me. All I had wanted was the chance to tell him the truth, but in his eyes, I wasn't even worth listening to. So with a heavy heart, I stopped fighting for my marriage and let him go. I didn't contest anything. I packed up, moved in with a friend, and slowly started rebuilding my life. Eventually, I got a job, saved up, and managed to get my own apartment. It took time, but I pulled myself out of the sadness. I refused to let myself sink into depression. I stayed angry at Nick, though. I believed I deserved at least one chance to explain, but after years of being together, he didn't even give me that. I felt betrayed, but I knew I had to protect myself and focus on building my own life. By the time the divorce was finalized, I had my own place and a routine. I didn't get much in the settlement, but I was fine with that. I just wanted to move on. A month after, I even went to Joe's wedding. It turned out to be a wonderful night. I reconnected with old college friends, danced, and for the first time in a while, felt like myself again. Nick skipped it, which didn't surprise me. Everyone was shocked to hear we'd split. Most had thought we'd be together forever. Honestly, I thought that too, but life clearly had other plans. Looking back, attending Joe's wedding was one of the best decisions I ever made, because that's where I met Chris, the man I'm married to now. He's 40, and we even have a daughter together. We talked that night, and I definitely felt a spark, but I held back. I had just gotten divorced and wanted to heal before I rushed into anything. I needed a break from men. We exchanged numbers, but I didn't text him right away. About a year later, once I felt stronger and ready to date again, I ran into Chris at a work event. Turns out we were in the same industry. That time, I finally agreed to go on a date with him. 2 years later, we were married, and within another year, we had our daughter, who's almost 5 now. So much time has passed since Nick and I ended, and I'm not the same person anymore. Which is why I was completely shocked when, out of nowhere, Nick showed up at my door just a few days ago. I don't even know how he found me, and honestly, I didn't care enough to ask. It was the weekend, and Chris and I were home with our daughter when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and froze. There was Nick, standing there smiling with a bouquet of roses like nothing had ever happened. Before I could even process it, he started talking, telling me how he had recently learned from a friend that Joe had married someone else, not me. That's when he realized he had overreacted all those years ago. He said he wanted another chance, and he was back to apologize and make things right. I was stunned. The fact that he had ended our marriage over a baseless assumption without giving me the chance to speak was already bad enough. But after 9 years of complete silence, he thought he could just waltz back into my life with flowers and a smile? Not a chance. As he kept talking, I stood there silently, debating what to do. Slamming the door in his face didn't feel satisfying enough. I wanted to humiliate him a little, the way he had humiliated me back then. So I told him to wait, turned around, and went back into the living room. Without giving Chris an explanation, I picked up our daughter and told him to follow me to the door. When Nick saw me standing there with my little girl in my arms and my husband right behind me, the color drained from his face. I gave him a smile, told him he was far too late to ask for a second chance, and asked him to leave. He didn't say a word. After a beat of silence, he bolted to his car and sped off. Watching him drive away, I finally felt the closure I had craved for so long. Later, I told Chris the whole story, and we laughed about it together. Nick had really believed I'd just drop everything and take him back, no questions asked, after what he put me through? He was out of his mind. I still can't figure out what possessed Nick to think showing up out of the blue like that was a good idea. If he had bothered to do even a little digging, one glance at my social media would have told him I'm married now and have a daughter. Sure, my accounts are private, but if he really wanted to know, he could have asked any of our old friends. Instead, he just assumed I'd been sitting around for nearly a decade waiting for him to come back. Chris says it's because Nick is so self-absorbed that he honestly believed I'd still be available when he was ready, and honestly, that's probably the most accurate description of him I've ever heard, even though Chris has never even spoken to him. It's been a few days since Nick showed up at my door, and I thought that would be the end of it. But this morning, he managed to send me a message on Facebook through a new account. In it, he said he was devastated by how I treated him and that he only wanted to sincerely apologize for the past. According to him, I had turned the whole thing into a cruel joke. He admitted he was sorry for what he did back then, but then had the audacity to claim I owed him an apology too for humiliating him. Update 1. I decided not to respond to Nick's message. He doesn't deserve even an ounce of my sympathy, much less an apology. Chris was right all along. Nick really did think I'd still be waiting for him, ready to take him back the second he felt like returning. He's always been self-centered, and sadly, I ignored those red flags when I married him. They were always there, but I was too blinded by love to notice. Even when we were together, Nick made me feel uncomfortable whenever I was around other men. He wouldn't confront me directly in the moment, but later he'd blow up, nitpicking every interaction until I felt guilty for simply talking to male friends. Eventually, I stopped seeing them altogether unless Nick was present. He also pushed me to quit my job. His reasoning was that since he worked long hours, he wanted me home so the house could be perfect when he got back, and apparently, I was the only one he trusted with that. At the time, I felt honored that he wanted me in that role, so I gave up my well-paying job and became the perfect housewife. And after all that sacrifice, he still didn't give me the chance to explain myself. I always suspected Nick was especially jealous of Joe, since Joe was my first boyfriend back in college. Nick would get extra possessive whenever Joe's name came up, even though I never gave him a reason to doubt me. I was loyal. I never so much as thought about cheating. But Nick clearly never trusted me enough to believe that. After the divorce, I was wrecked. It took a long time to heal and even longer to open my heart to someone else. Some people say I jumped into a new relationship too quickly, since I started dating Chris about a year after my divorce. Maybe they're right, I can't really argue with that. But looking at my life now, I don't regret it one bit. Because of that leap, I have the most supportive husband and a beautiful daughter. So no, I won't apologize to Nick. If anything, I owe him a thank you, because if he hadn't left, I might still be trapped in an unhappy marriage. Update 2. I found out some more details about Nick recently. Turns out the reason he didn't know anything about my life is because he deleted all his social media years ago. He'd been living in Seoul for work, completely out of touch with our old college circle. He only moved back a month ago. When he reconnected with an old friend, someone who wasn't particularly close to me, that friend didn't know about my marriage but did know Joe was married. That's all Nick heard, and based on that, he showed up at my doorstep. It's still ridiculous that he thought approaching me after almost 10 years was a good idea, but at this point, I don't care anymore. I ignored his Facebook message, and he hasn't reached out since. Joe was floored when I told him the whole story. He couldn't believe the nerve Nick had, showing up like that and even demanding an apology after what he did to me. My daughter asked who that man at the door was, but I told her he must have had the wrong address. She accepted that and didn't ask more. I don't plan on ever telling her the truth unless she somehow stumbles across it herself, which feels pretty unlikely. Update 3. Just when I thought it was over, Nick texted me again after almost a week of silence. I'd forgotten to block him, which was careless on my part, but I'd been busy with work, so I didn't think about it. His message made my skin crawl. He said there were still things he wanted to talk about and asked to meet up. Then he added that he didn't care that I was married with a child, he still wanted to give our relationship another chance, because he knew deep down that's what I wanted too. Basically, he was implying I'd be willing to cheat on my husband with him. Which is so twisted, considering that's the exact thing he wrongly accused me of 9 years ago. I was disgusted. I couldn't believe he had the gall to type those words and think I'd entertain them. I warned him to leave me alone and then blocked his number. I don't need that man dragging his toxicity back into my life. It blows my mind that he genuinely believes I still have feelings for him. I made it crystal clear when he came to my house that I've moved on, that my family is my entire world now. Instead of taking the hint, he doubled down and revealed just how pathetic and creepy he can be. Honestly, even writing about this makes me feel icky. But at least now, with him blocked everywhere, I won't have to see whatever disgusting messages he comes up with next. I'm doing my best to erase the last one from memory and focus on the life I actually care about, the one I built with Chris and our daughter. To be honest, the whole situation was just plain gross. Update 4. Some of you keep accusing me of still having feelings for Nick, and I want to shut that down immediately. I don't. I hate him. And honestly, I think that's a pretty natural reaction considering this man was once my husband before he walked out on me. Of course I told Chris about the text Nick sent, why wouldn't I? I'm not a cheater, never have been, and I'd never hide something like that from my husband. Chris is the love of my life, and I'd never risk my marriage. The only reason I even opened the door to Nick the first time was because I have this bad habit of not checking who's there when my husband is home. I'm working on that, but trust me, I would never willingly let Nick back into my life. The idea that people think I secretly want that is sickening. Hopefully this clears the air. Update 5. Nick showed up again, but this time I was smarter, I checked before opening the door. Thankfully, my daughter was out with Chris visiting his parents. I was supposed to go too but got caught up with work. When I realized it was Nick standing outside, I told him through the door to leave and never come back. I thought I had made myself perfectly clear. Instead, he tried to talk his way in again. He told me he'd only be in town for a couple more weeks before moving abroad, as if that was supposed to mean something to me. Then he said this would be convenient for us and that I didn't need to fight it anymore, we could finally be together now. I couldn't believe the nerve of him. He was literally outside my house telling me to cheat on my husband. I was disgusted. I warned him he had 3 seconds to leave or I'd call the police. He ignored me, so I picked up the phone and did exactly that. When the officers arrived, they escorted him away. I'm relieved my daughter wasn't there to see any of it. I called Chris immediately, and he was home within half an hour. He checked to make sure I was okay, and physically I was, though I felt shaken. What rattled me most was not knowing how Nick had even found our home. The mutual friend who told him about Joe's marriage wasn't close enough to know my personal details, so it didn't add up. Now I feel unsettled in my own house, and I hate it. Chris and I have already started talking about tightening our security, even reaching out to his uncle who works with the police for advice. It's become clear that this has crossed into creepy territory, and I don't want to wait around to see how far Nick will take it. Update 6. I finally figured out how Nick got my address. Turns out, one of my college friends casually gave it to his old buddy without asking me first. When I confronted her, she apologized over and over, saying she didn't think to check with me first. I'm furious. Giving out someone's home address is such a basic boundary, something even a child would understand. Because of her carelessness, I've been dragged into this whole mess. I need a break from her, and honestly, I don't know if our friendship will recover. Nick hasn't tried to reach out since the police removed him from my property, but Chris and I are still considering moving, just in case. Our biggest concern is our daughter's safety, her school is close by, and I can't shake the paranoia. The only thing holding us back is how attached she is to our house. She loves it here, and the thought of moving has her really upset. We're weighing our options, but in the meantime, we're focused on keeping her safe without turning her world upside down. Update 7. I can finally breathe easier. Nick moved to Canada, I confirmed it with several people. He's even back on social media, so I know it's true. Before he left, he sent me one last message, claiming he still believed there was a chance for us. He wrote that I was just too scared to give in, but one day I'd realize I still loved him and that Chris was nothing more than an obstacle. He even said he'd adopt my daughter to prove his devotion, and he gave me his new address in Canada so I could reach out whenever I was ready. Reading that made me realize just how delusional he is. At least now he's gone, and with him on another continent, I don't have to worry about him showing up at my door again. He used a new number, so I blocked it too, and that was that. The best part is that we don't have to move. My daughter is thrilled to stay in the home she loves, and as long as she's happy and safe, I'm happy too. Chris and I are still keeping our new security measures in place, just to be safe. We even sat together one evening, drinking wine while our daughter played, and reread Nick's last message. Instead of feeling afraid, we just laughed at how absurd it all was. Even after seeing my family with his own eyes, Nick still thought I'd ever want him back. It's unreal how self-absorbed one person can be. I even showed the text to Joe, and his reaction was the same, total disbelief. I still haven't spoken to the friend who gave out my address. What she did was reckless, and as a mother herself, she should have known better. She didn't just put me in an uncomfortable position, she put my entire family at risk. That's something I can't forgive. For now, I'm focusing on moving forward. Chris and I are planning a beach trip in a few weeks, our daughter's favorite place. After everything we've been through recently, I think we all deserve a break. It's been stressful, and both Chris and I have been busy with work, but I'm looking forward to the time away. And to everyone who's been sending love and support, thank you. It really means a lot.